Let's discuss further with tonight's opening panel. And joining me here in studio, Rabbi Brad Hirschfield, a Middle East analyst. He's also the president of Klal, a national Jewish leadership organization. Naseer Alomari, a Middle East analyst and political commentator. And from Washington, D.C., Matt Brodsky, a senior fellow at the Security Studies Group. Welcome to you all. Rabbi, I'd like to start with you. What do you think was accomplished in Bahrain?
It's very hard to tell. I think by and large, unfortunately, it's more sizzle than steak. But there are two separate issues here, and they should be addressed separately. Blending them does not help. In terms of peace with the Palestinians, probably very little was accomplished. But in terms of normalization between Israel and the Gulf states, that may move forward, but the two are not inherently linked. The linkage between Israel and the Gulf states is as much about a check on Iran as anything else. All well and good, probably very constructive for stability in the region as a whole, but has very little to do with making peace with the Palestinians unless all those Sunni states are ready to throw Palestinians under the bus, which I don't think is going to happen.
Naseer, did you support the Palestinian Authority leadership not attending this conference? Do you think that that was the right move on their end?
I think they made a big mistake because if you're talking about the Palestinian economy and if you're talking about billions of dollars being poured into your, or planned to be poured into your economy, you have to be part of the discussion. And then if you don't like it, you get to say, well, how about that political piece? But I think the Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority got caught up in the rhetoric, Hamas rhetoric and the Iranian rhetoric on the media, saying this is a treason, this is not good for the Palestinians. And I think they found it very hard to come to the table. Eventually, though, I believe that I agree with the rabbi, they have to come to the table, and I believe the Palestinian Authority will come to the table.
So Naseer, you agree that this was a disservice to the Palestinian people when their own leadership did not even bother to engage, to at least attend and hear what was being discussed?
I agree, and I think, as I said, you can always raise your concerns, and that's actually a good platform to say, okay, I like this economic aspect of it, but how are we going to do this politically? So I think, I do believe, though, that the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, will come back to the table and leave Hamas behind with the Iranian rhetoric saying, this is really bad, this is not going anywhere, because what is the alternative? There is no alternative, and I think Mr. Mahmoud Abbas understands that.
Matt, despite the skepticism, I mean, does this indicate a shift in the region? As we've mentioned, there did seem to be an air of normalization between Israelis and Arabs. You also had the Bahraini foreign minister saying Israel is here to stay, acknowledging Israel's right to exist. Other Arab countries attending, no longer denying the existence of the Jewish state. And again, you had this image of dozens of business people from Arab countries at ease, chatting with the Israeli counterparts openly and in the presence of journalists. Is that in itself a big win for the Trump administration?
I think it's a major win for the Trump administration. It's a major win for Israel. It would have been better, of course, from Israel's perspective, if the Palestinian Authority would have sent someone over there and then the Israelis could have been represented at an official level. That would have been probably the best scenario from Israel's perspective. From the Palestinian perspective, and a normal Palestinian who's not in the pro-status quo Palestinian Authority, this has to have been another occasion where the Palestinian Authority is sliding themselves into the book of irrelevance. Events on the ground are happening, and the future is coming, and the region is moving forward. The whole issue of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is no longer a central theme in Arab politics. I've been hearing from Palestinian Authority people for today and yesterday who are extremely upset, keep repeating the same talking points again and again in a type of anger that is literally the kind you would see when they've thrown a tantrum by calling for a boycott and then they've found out that it just has not worked. And the fact is, it hasn't. And so they're just sticking by their talking points, and that's gotten them nowhere.
All right, gentlemen, stick around. More to discuss after the break.
I think it's not just the Arab leaders. I think it's going to be Europe. I think it's going to be countries in Asia. What we'd like to do is hear feedback to all these projects. Jared put a tremendous amount of effort together with a large team, both inside the U.S. government and outside the U.S. government, to detail what these projects are going to be like. We'd like to hear feedback from all of the countries. We'd love to hear feedback from the Palestinian leadership.
That was President Trump's special Middle East envoy Jason Greenblatt speaking to I-24 News at the Bahrain Economic Conference about what he hopes will happen next now that the two-day summit has wrapped up. Let's discuss. Back with me is Brad Hirschfield, Matt Brodsky, and Naseer Alomari. So, Naseer, what do you think happens next? Because as we heard from Matt, it does seem as though the Palestinian leadership is losing relevance, especially when you see the Arab world ignoring their pleas for boycott. And even at the very least, 15 Palestinian business leaders did attend and engage with Israelis.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to imagine anything going forward without the Palestinian Authority. But you are right. Seeing this normalization, this was not something that anybody would have expected just 6-7 years ago. Sitting with the Israelis in the Gulf and working with Saudi Arabia this closely, I think that was unimaginable just a few years ago. So despite all the pessimism, I believe that getting to the point where we're talking about major projects, we're talking about projects that will bring together the Palestinian Authority with Israel and Lebanon and Jordan, I think that's a great breakthrough. However, the public relations aspect of what Mr. Kushner was doing was really not effective in the Arab street. This,
right.
The Iranian-led media presented this to the people as something that America is imposing. This is in Israel interest, when in fact they're talking about water projects for the Palestinians and electricity and employing 1 million Palestinians. So that really, the public relations aspect of this was not very well thought out. Everything else, I think, is a great step, awaiting a political move.
And whilst this political move is awaited, why not improve the living conditions for the Palestinians? I mean, Rabbi, it's really hard to make an argument against it. I hear your point that this normalization of ties is perhaps more about Iran and forming a coalition against Iran and less about the Palestinians. But doesn't it dilute the Palestinians' political causes for statehood when their Arab brothers are not that interested in their demands anymore, if they're focusing more on, yes, improving the lives of the Palestinians, but not necessarily sticking to the script that the Palestinian leadership has been dictating for all of these years?
So there's no question, a new script would be enormously helpful, but I don't know that it's coming so quickly. And the fact is, we can talk about improving lives, but even on the ground in Bahrain, the Saudis, the Bahrainis all said not $1 will flow until there is some kind of political resolution. And so when I talk about more sizzle than steak, things aren't going to improve. At the same time, Gaza power was cut off today. By the way, because there were 25 incendiary kites that were sent across the border to try and burn Israel. So we are talking in Bahrain about improving conditions. The Hamas-led government of Gaza is trying to burn Israel, and Israel necessarily then cuts off the power. So there's a widening gulf, no pun intended, between the words that we're using in one area and the reality in another. Until that gets closed, I don't think things are going to improve.
Matt, to the rabbi's point, the goal was to create a $50 billion investment fund to boost the Palestinian territories and their economies and those of neighboring countries as well. So where does that stand? Where do we stand with that money-raising goal?
Well, it's an enticement for the Palestinian people because the Palestinian media is stuck with specific talking points and not really getting to the Palestinian street what is actually at stake and what their life could in fact be like.
Matt, do we know at this stage if there has been some kind of commitment of funds?
I've heard that there is a commitment of some, but it's not going to be released publicly as far as that information yet, and it's not happening on the ground until there's in fact going to be a political solution with it. They've been very clear that it's the economic plan and the political plan that both need to happen at the same time.
So what does happen next then, Matt? I know you've been advising the situation. I know you're very close to it. So from your perspective, what do you think happens next?
I think the White House would have preferred to have released the political plan around this time. Of course, they're putting it off now to probably November because there's the Israeli elections. And I've been reminding others I've spoken to today that, look, they may have had the same type of thinking, of course, for the Palestinian Authority, but it's year 15 of Abbas's 4-year term. So that doesn't seem to be a problem in the Palestinian part. When it comes to the political plan, the one thing that you'll keep hearing from Palestinian leadership, however, is that they want what is the Arab 2002 peace initiative. And what that calls for, though, is East Jerusalem as a Palestinian capital, the 1967 line in total, and the return of refugees not specified where.
So back to square one. Back to square one in terms of having absolutely no progress on the political side. I do want to touch on one point, Naseer, and it's something that Matt has been alluding to as well. The whole conference, you got a sense that Kushner, as well as leading up to the conference, Kushner and Greenblatt were addressing the Palestinian people directly, telling them this is not necessarily the deal of the century, it's the opportunity of the century for you to have your lives improved. Is that message resonating? And if it does resonate, can there be some kind of change in the Palestinian leadership? As Matt pointed out, Mahmoud Abbas serving, the 14th term of his 4-year election service.
Yeah. I mean, the Palestinian street, there's a lot of skepticism about what this is about. Of course, the steps that Mr. Trump took before this conference, which is the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, that was thought to be pro-Israeli, the annexation of the Golan Heights. So there was a lot, the settlements. So the Palestinians feel like this is just another step in supporting Israel. But I believe that when Mr. Kushner said, Mr. Trump cares about you and he wants you to have a future, and this is a step in the right direction. We're talking about huge projects. I bet you that resonates with the Palestinian population, who are suffering tremendously because of economic hardship. But all of this is almost a fantasy. We're talking about it, and there is yet to have anything concrete. So I believe that short-term goals, if the Palestinians start to see improvement in their and drinking water and electricity, anything to make this concrete and real, I believe this is what the Palestinians who are skeptical of what this whole thing is about, and also politicians who feel like they're brushed aside. Hamas is brushed aside, Abbas is brushed aside, so they can't be happy about this. They have to come back into the game, and I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the Palestinian Authority. I
think we can all agree on that one. Naseer, Alomari, thank you so much. Matt Brodsky, appreciate it as always.